All right, are we live? Let me check my channel to see if the video is appearing. I think we are live. Right on time, 10 o'clock p.m. on the dot. All right. So as you can see in this live stream, I removed all of the camera information that was taking up the bottom of the screen in the last live stream. There's no more square around my face. So the quality of this live stream should be a lot better. I had a lot more time to prepare. The lighting should be a little bit better. If you have any issues with audio or video, just let me know in the live chat. Audio is kind of low. Let me try to fix that. Does that make the audio sound better? The problem is the camera or the microphone is a little far away. So let me try to increase the sensitivity. And we're already getting super chats. Thank you, Cuckoo, for that $2 super chat. They said, hello, how are you today? I'm doing very well, thank you. This live stream is going to be a Q&A. You can ask me anything you want about YouTube, about Apple, about my personal life, anything you want, and then I will answer your questions. The live chat typically is going pretty quickly. So if you want to make sure your questions get answered, leave a super chat, and then that will highlight your question, and then I'll know for sure to answer. So let's see if that is a better sensitivity for the microphone. You should be able to hear my voice pretty clearly now. So Daily Apple asked, what time is it in your location? Right here in Columbus, Ohio, it's 10 p.m. And I'm going to be live streaming until 11 o'clock, so about an hour. Otstop asked, opinions on PewDiePie just passing 100 million subscribers. It's an incredible milestone. I don't know if anyone imagined there would be a YouTuber with 100 million subscribers when YouTube started, 13 or 14 years ago. So it's incredible, and it just proves how powerful YouTube is as a platform. I think last year I read a statistic that there was more minutes watched of YouTube videos than live television last year. So it's definitely becoming a major platform without any real competition. So it's incredible. Bonsuk M asked, hi, how do you get the source materials for your videos? This is actually a really good question. I get asked a lot. When I think of a video topic, it's something that seems interesting to me and to my audience because you guys vote on it with the voting polls. And so when I research that topic, I spend hours and hours and hours looking at different articles, different threads on tech websites like MacRumors or Inside Apple or 9to5Mac. I look at Reddit to see if there's anyone talking about their opinion on the topic, just to get as much information, as many facts as possible. And then I create an outline with all the information I gather. And then I try to form a narrative or a story in chronological order that would be interesting for people to listen to. So it's a lot of research. Diavox Diavolve asked, are you going to buy iPhone 11? Probably not. I have the iPhone 10 right now, and it's still an incredible phone. I think the iPhone 10 is still the best budget iPhone on the market when you get it used. Obviously, it's not being sold new anymore by Apple themselves, but you can get it used for like $550, which is an incredible deal if you consider the iPhone 10's technology is not that different from the iPhone 10s. And this year's iPhone, based on the rumors we know so far, is not going to be that different from the iPhone 10s. So I think the iPhone 10, as it drops even more, is the iPhone to buy until the 2020 iPhone comes out next year, which is supposed to be the next big upgrade. Matt O'Fun asked, which iPhone did I have first? My first iPhone was the 5, and then I went to the iPhone 7, and then the iPhone 10. And actually, the only iPhone I bought new from Apple was the iPhone 5. I bought my iPhone 7 from swappa.com used, and I bought my iPhone 10 locally through an app called OfferUp, and I got a really good deal on those iPhones used. If you guys don't already know, I have a Discord for my YouTube channel. And if you want to join, one of my moderators, Nick, just posted the link, which I really appreciate. We have 2 moderators today, Nick and Daniel. Thank you guys for being here. I appreciate your help. On the Discord server, you can ask me questions directly. And after this live stream, go to the Discord server, ask your question, and then I will consolidate all the questions I receive after this stream, and I'll post a short little Q&A video just for my Discord members. Gaming Teen, thank you for that super chat of $2. They said, go to Discord on channel about page. Yeah, so my Discord is on my channel page in the bottom right corner of the banner. You'll see a little quick link to it. Daily Apple asked, what's the best iPhone you ever used? The best iPhone I ever used is definitely the iPhone 10. I mean, you could say 10s since it's newer. But in terms of the first time I picked up an iPhone model after the original iPhone and had a feeling of amazement because of how incredible the technology was, the iPhone 10 it gave me the feeling that I had when I tried the original iPhone in 2007. It completely revolutionized how you used it simply because of the swipe navigation and the edge-to-edge display and Face ID. I mean, those elements alone completely transformed the iPhone experience. Becky Pack, to get an answer, you do not have to pay for me to answer your question, but I can't answer everyone's questions. So if you want to answer for sure, you can give a super chat. Someone asked, when will the iPhone SE 2 be launching? If you guys don't know, there are rumors that Apple is going to be making an updated iPhone SE. No one really knows if that's true or not. That could just be a rumor. If it is true, I would love to see an updated iPhone SE. I would love to see it as soon as possible. But if they were to launch it, I'm not sure if it would be next year or the year after, or if ever. I mean, they may never return to that form factor. Timothy Owens, thank you for your $2.79 Canadian super chat. They asked, do you think the AR glasses have been canceled? That's a really good question. There have been some pretty legitimate rumors surrounding Apple developing augmented reality glasses similar to Google Glass, which was a project Google canceled. And supposedly people are, it's an active project. Apple has moved people to it. Supposedly it's being developed. So I don't think it's canceled. I think they're still working on it. Now, will it see the light of day? I don't know. There's a lot of projects Apple works on that never is actually released. So we'll have to wait and see about that. It's really interesting because glasses are even more of a personal object than a watch. Like a watch, people want it to be pretty fashionable. They want to be able to customize it in certain ways to match their fashion or their personality. But when it comes to glasses, the customization, I think, has to be even more detailed for people to see it as something they would want to wear all the time. So if Apple does come out with augmented reality glasses, I'm really interested to see how they execute it, because that's what matters. Remember, when Samsung released their Galaxy Gear smartwatch, the first generation, in 2014, 1 year before the original Apple Watch, the idea was good. Smartwatches would be an important piece of technology, but Samsung did not execute on the idea well at all. It was a terrible product, that first generation model, and it didn't do well. The following year, the Apple Watch came out and it was executed well. So just because Google Glass wasn't able to execute on AR glasses doesn't mean another company like Apple can't do it better. Review, thank you for your $5 super chat. They said you missed my last super chat. Let me go back to see if I can track it down. I found it, Review. Thank you. Thank you for that $5 super chat. They said, hey Greg, looking good. Thank you. Also, what camera are you using? I am using the Sony Mark III. Daniel C., thank you for that $2 super chat. He's one of the moderators. Thank you, Daniel. He said, do you have Apple Explained merchandise? I do. Thank you for asking. If you take a look at the shirt I'm wearing right now, it just so happens I am wearing the exclusive Apple Explained t-shirt with the logo on the back. And it's like a silicon circuit board with the processor right here over the heart, because processors are sort of nicknamed the heart of computers. So if you want to buy this t-shirt, Daniel will post a link in the live chat for you. Brian Ambo, thank you for your $2.79 Canadian super chat. They asked, what are your thoughts on the right to repair? If you guys don't know, right to repair is a sort of concept where tech companies like Apple are forced legally to make their parts available to third-party repair shops so that they don't have a monopoly on the repair process. I'm not sure about the details of the legislation, but I believe that's the main idea. If I'm wrong, go ahead and correct me in the chat. I support that idea. I think the power should be with customers to repair their products with who they see fit. And I think having competition in that area is a healthy thing for customers. Michael Wilson asked, hey Greg, do you think the upgrade to the Apple Watch Series 5 is worth it? The Apple Watch Series 5, if you don't already know, is going to be unveiled this fall. We don't know much about it. There haven't been very many rumors. Apparently, it might be getting some new biometric sensors. But it's not supposed to be a major upgrade. So, without actually knowing what the Series 5 watch is, I will probably recommend the Series 4 if the Series 5 is not a big upgrade, because I love my Series 4. This was the biggest Apple Watch milestone since the original, and I love it. My mom loves it. My aunt loves it. I highly recommend it. And then once that Series 5 comes out, you can find these on Swappa, swappa.com. It's the best place to find used Apple products. You can find these probably for $200, $250, pretty cheap. I am subscribed to PewDiePie, Leo. Apple Videos asked, hey Greg, soon I'm getting an iPhone 10, but thinking of getting a wireless charger, should I? That's a good question. If you guys don't know, the iPhone 10 has wireless charging as well as the iPhone 8. And Apple tried making AirPower, it didn't work out, so we're stuck buying third-party wireless chargers right now. I have the Nomad wireless charging station, which I highly recommend. It has a built-in Apple Watch charger as well as 3 coils on the mat, so I can charge my AirPods and my iPhone 10 at the same time. Here's my recommendation as far as wireless charging. If you only have an iPhone, and that's the only thing you want to wirelessly charge, you can get one of those cheaper single coil wireless chargers, and I think it'll be helpful. But if you plan on getting the 2nd generation AirPods with the wireless charging case, or you also have an Apple Watch, I would recommend investing in one of the more expensive multi-coil charging stations with the Apple Watch charger, because if you have those devices, being able to charge them wirelessly simultaneously is a huge convenience that I highly recommend if you have the budget for it. Daniel C., thank you for that $2 super chat. Merchandise link is in the Discord if you didn't catch it. Thank you, Daniel. Eduardo Sosa, what are your thoughts on the Apple Card? I actually have one, so let me bring it out for you. Here's my Apple Card. As you can see, it's beautiful. It's titanium metal. I'm sure you guys already know. This is what it sounds like when you throw it on the counter. Here are my thoughts. If you are a credit card fiend and you love taking advantage of the rewards that credit cards offer, and that's your primary concern when it comes to credit cards, the Apple Card is not right for you. The rewards are mediocre, they're average. 2% cash back on Apple Pay purchases, 1% cash back when you use a card, and then 3% cash back on Apple purchases, including iTunes, App Store, and now Uber. Uber Eats and Uber Rides now give you 3% cash back since Apple just made a deal with them. So, if you're focused on rewards, I don't recommend it. This is the defining feature of the Apple Card that differentiates it from everything else. It is the integration with iOS. You can go to the Wallet app and track all of your spending with this thing, and it's pretty incredible and pretty powerful. As you can see, all of my transactions are just listed right here. And I don't have to do any extra work to keep track of where I'm spending money, what categories I'm spending most. It automatically tracks it. And it has an auto pay feature, so I don't have to wait for my bill to come in the mail and then pay it manually or to do it online. I don't even have to think about it. It automatically pays itself. I really like that feature. So it depends on how you use credit cards. That's my recommendation. Always, always, always with credit cards, this is very important. Use it like cash. Do not charge something that you can't afford. You do not want to carry a balance and pay the interest rates because they're astronomical. They're technically lower than the average, but still astronomical. So to stay financially responsible. Snapdragon 875. Do you have a friend who works at Apple? No, I don't. Alexandre Silva. Nice logo, Greg. Thank you. Could you please answer my question? If the iPhone 7 is worth it. This is a good question. Is the iPhone 7 worth buying in 2019? As you know, if you want a budget iPhone with with pretty much the latest technology, I recommend a used iPhone 10. It's the best bang for your buck. It's still $550, kind of expensive if you don't have a big budget. If your budget is like $200, I would recommend an iPhone 7. I think it still has incredible technology. You're not going to notice any lagging. You're not going to notice any performance issues with iOS 12. And even with iOS 13, I think it's going to perform well on the iPhone 7. And it'll last you at least a couple years with good performance. So yes, the iPhone 7, if you're on a budget, is the perfect iPhone to buy in 2019. Alexandros Prokos asked, Bloomberg says the iPhone 11 will have the following features. 1, shatterproof glass. 2, reverse wireless charging. 3, Apple Pencil support. Do you think this is true? It sounds true. It sounds reasonable. I think the glass will be strengthened. I think reverse wireless charging would make sense. Samsung came out with that on their last S11 release, I believe. And it wouldn't surprise me if Apple also incorporated that feature. And Apple Pencil support. I think they would bring Apple Pencil support to the iPhone, especially if you have something like the iPhone XS Max, just that size. I can see carrying around the Apple Pencil and using your iPhone as sort of like a note-taking machine on the go. That could be convenient. So I think we may see those features. Weird People asked, what do you think about the iPhone 5C? I've seen so many videos where people have said this phone was the worst phone from Apple. That may be true, actually. When the iPhone 5 came out, it was the first generation of iPhone with a budget model released with it, which was the iPhone 5C. If you guys don't know what that was, it was basically the technology of the iPhone 5 with a plastic design that was very colorful. And Apple really marketed it heavily, sort of like how they market the iPhone XR today. But they didn't sell, perhaps they did sell well, but it was not a great deal. I think the iPhone XR today is a really good deal. I think the iPhone XS, when it was sold, was a really good deal for a budget iPhone. The problem was the iPhone 5C had outdated technology the day it was released. Whereas that wasn't true with the iPhone SE. The iPhone SE had iPhone 6s technology, which was the current iPhone at the time. The iPhone XR has a lot of iPhone 10 technology in terms of the processor and things like that. So I think it's probably true that the 5C was one of the worst iPhones Apple released. DV and the Houseman asked, do you have an iPhone 2G? That's the original iPhone. I do have the original iPhone. Let me go get it for you. It's right in my glass case. Here is the original iPhone. It's in pretty good condition. 30-pin connector. We have a recessed headphone jack. I don't know if you guys can see this. This headphone jack is actually very deep inside the phone, and you could only use Apple headphones with this phone, or you'd have to get an adapter. Supposedly, it's because this design was created last minute because Steve Jobs didn't like the original design they were going to go with. And in order to accommodate this last minute design, they had to make a recessed headphone jack. That's a rumor. I don't know if that's exactly true or not. Slim Shady asked, are you married? No. Caddy16. Forgive me if you explained this in an earlier video. Why is Apple starting to phase out the iconic I prefix? Yeah, so the I prefix was introduced with the iMac. It stood for several things, including internet, which was a big selling point of the original iMac. They're starting to phase it out. And from what I've read, it has to do with trademark issues. Because Apple tried to trademark the lowercase I for their products so that other companies couldn't use that I. But as you know, a lot of other companies use the I for I whatever, I home, I blank. So Apple was unsuccessful in court to trademark that. And I think that's part of the reason, from what I read, it's part of the reason why they're transitioning to using Apple instead, because Apple itself is inherently a trademark. So no one else can use that in front of their product, or else they would be violating Apple's intellectual property. So I think that's part of the reason. And I think it's just sort of a transitional thing to mark a new era of Apple products, because I has been around for almost 2 decades. DEM asked a good question. They asked, can you explain the major differences between the management styles of Steve Jobs and Tim Cook? Yeah. So I have some pretty strong opinions on this, because other people have really strong opinions on this that I don't agree with. Steve Jobs was clearly an iconic figure in the world. I mean, in entrepreneurship, he changed so many industries, not just technology. And so when it came time for Steve to pass the torch to someone else, there was this inherent struggle for people to accept the fact that Steve Jobs is gone. And their standard was so high because Steve Jobs was the CEO, that no matter who took the mantle from him, they would be critical because it wasn't Steve Jobs. But I want to say this. The worst thing that could have happened after Steve Jobs left was that someone became CEO that tried to be like Steve Jobs. Because there's no other Steve Jobs. There's just one, and he's gone. So we need someone else to take over the company who does things their own way, but that's still beneficial to the company. And Tim Cook was perfect for that. And it makes sense because Steve Jobs chose Tim Cook to take over the company. So it's sort of an insult to Jobs if you don't really approve of Cook. But just in terms of their management styles, one thing I appreciate about Tim Cook is he's much more reasonable and rational than Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs was very emotional. He was short-tempered. He had a weird way of manipulating situations in terms of having one opinion one day, a few days later, completely changing his mind without anyone knowing why. Or he would hear an idea from someone and then adopt that idea and sort of steal it and say, oh, I came up with this. Tim Cook also cares a lot about humanitarian issues, more so than Jobs did. He's much more charitable, taking the company in that direction. He's taking a company in a much more environmentally aggressive direction than Steve Jobs did. So there are things I appreciate about both people. Not to mention, Tim Cook is an operations genius. I mean, what he has achieved with products like the Apple Watch, which is a nightmare logistically because of how many combinations you can put together with an Apple Watch, it's just incredible what he's achieved. Sheldon Baker asked, Greg, are you using iOS beta 13? And what are your thoughts of it? Sheldon, I'm not using the beta of iOS 13. I don't use beta. I don't try betas because I only have one iPhone and I only have one iPad. So if I upgrade to iOS beta version and there's going to be bugs, I mean, that's without question because it's a beta. I could have apps crashing. I could have poor performance. I could have poor battery life, slow launching of apps. That's not something I want to deal with on a day-to-day basis, especially when I work on those devices. I mean, my livelihood is based on the performance of those devices. So I wait until the OS is finalized and it's released to the public. But I'm really excited to upgrade to iOS 13. My favorite new feature is the video editing in the Photos app. Finally, we can rotate a video that we accidentally filmed in the wrong orientation. So I'm really excited about that. Tech Expert asked, which iPad and iPhone do you have? I have the 11-inch iPad Pro and I have the iPhone 10. Rockman121 New asked, why did you want to do YouTube videos? That's a good question. If you look at the second video I ever made on my YouTube channel, it was the history of the iPod. And it's just a simple slideshow that I created in Keynote about 10 years ago. And it's every model of the iPod at that point shown in chronological order with the major features of each release. And I did that because I was on YouTube looking for that video. I thought, that's a cool thing to see. I wonder if someone has a video about it. And I couldn't find one. And I realized, hey, I could probably make this myself in Keynote because I had actually used Keynote a lot already because I would recreate Steve Jobs keynotes and present them to my family. So I had some skill with that application. So then I just did it myself. I uploaded it just because I wanted to watch it. And then it just so happened other people wanted to watch it too, and the video did quite well, and then things just went from there. Anshu Suresh asked, could you tell us your favorite Apple product to date? My favorite Apple product ever. That's really, really hard. It would probably have to be the iPhone. I mean, the iPhone is what I use most. It completely transformed the smartphone industry, and I can't imagine living without it. So probably the iPhone 10 is my favorite Apple product so far. Noah Johnson, thank you for that $2 super chat. He said, why not? I'm not sure what you're referring to, Noah. Daniel, Daniel asked, what do you think about Apple simplicity? I've read so many things about it. Do you think Tim Cook is still applying those principles? Daniel, I think you're referring to sort of the minimalism, that design philosophy when it comes to Apple products that Jonathan Ive sort of instilled in the company, and Steve Jobs also obviously instilled in the company. Those values and that philosophy is still with the company today. I mean, Apple is still creating products based on that philosophy, and it's why their products are still so successful. Look at the Apple Watch. Unbelievable success. I think it has 40 or 50% of the entire global smart watch market. And second place is like Samsung or Fitbit, and they're not even close to the Apple Watch. AirPods. incredible product, wildly successful worldwide. These were all products released under Tim Cook with the same philosophy used for previous products. So until we start seeing products that we did when Steve Jobs left in the late 80s, if you look up like Mac computers from the mid and early 90s, you'll see what it looks like when Apple abandons their core design philosophy. And that hasn't happened yet. Bruh Dude asked, if you could have an iPhone have any feature, what feature would you give it? That's a really good question. If I could give the iPhone any feature, I know what I want. I'm a very simple guy. When a phone call comes through, I want that to show up as a notification at the top of the screen. I don't want it to take over my entire display and block what I'm in the middle of doing. And I would even be okay if it did do that, it takes over the screen, but then I can like swipe up and get that phone call to just be at the top of the screen. I would love that. Joshua Barden said, I think AirPods have a 50% share in the wireless headphone market. That sounds right. I'm actually surprised it's not more. Loser Trash Tips asked, was Steve Jobs overrated? I don't think he was necessarily overrated. I think he deserves the recognition he's received because of everything he's achieved. I just think sometimes when someone like Steve Jobs passes away or leaves a company, people get really sentimental and they reminisce on all the good things that person did. And they miss them, and that's natural. The problem is they take those feelings and then project it onto the next CEO and use that to criticize them. And they forget all the mistakes Steve Jobs made. The iPod Hi-Fi, you probably don't know what that is because it was a failure under Steve Jobs. Ping, you may not know what that is because it was a failure under Steve Jobs. The Motorola Rocker, you may not know what that is because it was a failure under Steve Jobs. Mobile Me, you may not know what that is because it was a failure under Steve Jobs. And people just forget that Steve Jobs was a human and he made some incredible decisions and he made some poor decisions, and that's just the way it is. And Tim Cook is a person too. So Young 24 asked, Greg, how did Apple become one of the best companies for accessibility features? Yeah, I don't know if you guys know this, but when it comes to accessibility features for the hearing impaired, sight impaired, any sort of impairment, Apple is the leading tech company in the industry for developing features to accommodate those people. And in terms of how it began, I'm not really sure if there was a reason why Apple cared so much. I think it was just part of their philosophy of it's the right thing to do. Investing in accessibility features is just the right thing to do. It may not sell that many more units. It may not be a great return on investment, but everyone needs to use technology and everyone should have access to it. And it started under Steve Jobs. I mean, ever since Steve Jobs with the original iMac, I mean, that had great accessibility features also, and it's been carried through until today, and they've just iterated on it and continue to focus their efforts onto it, and it's very respectable. I actually made a whole video about it, and I appreciate that Apple is so serious and committed to serving the needs of people with certain impairments. The Anime Fan 89.6. When were you exposed to Apple? This is a good question. Technically, I was always exposed to Apple since I can remember, because my dad's a graphic designer and he had a Mac for his freelance design work. So ever since I was a kid, I was using a Mac. In fact, I thought that's how all computers were, until I went to a friend's house and they had a Windows PC, and then I thought every computer looked different. Like every computer has a different interface. But of course that's not true. But I didn't fall in love with Apple until I saw the iMac G4 in 2002, I think. I was probably 8 years old, or 9. And I remember seeing that product at Micro Center in the Apple section, and I just fell in love with that product. I thought that's the most beautiful machine I've ever seen in my life. I didn't make the association that that was Apple making the product, designing it. But later on in life, when I was 12, I think, or 13, I used an iPod for the first time, the iPod Video. And that's when I kind of made the connection. Wow, this company, Apple, is really incredible. And back then, Apple was not the company they are today. Like today, Apple is one of the biggest tech companies in the world. Back then, they were not a huge player. I mean, they did not have the money and the influence that they have today. So then I sort of just became like a big fan and a spokesperson for Apple, just telling people how awesome they were, getting them the exposure I thought they deserved. And that's what I continue to do today. Daniel C., thank you for that $2 super chat. He asked, is there a schedule of posting videos or streams? In terms of my video essays, I don't have a schedule. I just sort of do them as quickly as I can. In my live streams, I do have a schedule. I post a live stream every Saturday night. So that's when you can expect live streams. Nico Imperial asked, hi, do you think there will be an official Apple store in the Philippines? That's a good question. I'm not familiar with Apple's situation in the Philippines. I'm not sure why they haven't already put one there. It could be because of a variety of reasons. I am familiar with India's situation, where Apple had to source at least 30% of their components locally from India's market in order to open a retail store in their country. And they're doing that now, and so Apple is planning on opening a store in India. Maybe the Philippines has a similar criteria that Apple needs to satisfy in order to open a store, and maybe the market isn't big enough for them to invest in the Philippines, so that may be part of the problem. But maybe one day it'll change. That would be nice. Apple Videos asked, Greg, what do you hate about Apple? That's a pretty good question. I have to think about that. I don't think I would say I hate anything about them. But sometimes the limitations can be a bit annoying. Sometimes there seem to be arbitrary limitations on certain software features or things that just don't really make sense. I remember there used to be, I think there's a timer for how long you want the display to stay on until it shuts off. And Apple had like a set number of minutes, like 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour, 2 hours, or never. And that was it. You couldn't customize like 45 minutes or 25 minutes, which seems to be something that would be pretty easy to implement, to just type in a number. But sometimes things like that can be annoying, but that's just part of Apple's philosophy. Jonathan said, drinks water to answer serious question. It buys me time to think about it. Weird People asked, how do you feel about this 16-inch MacBook Pro? Yeah, if you guys don't know, there are rumors that Apple will be releasing a 16-inch MacBook Pro this fall, perhaps this fall, as soon as this fall. I'm really excited for it. Supposedly, it's going to have a much thinner bezel. The corners will be rounded, similar to the iPhone X and the iPad Pro. It's supposedly going to have an updated keyboard, which is more durable, that will return to the scissor mechanism instead of the butterfly mechanism. I'm excited to see what they do with it. I'm excited to see how powerful it is, especially after the MacBook Pro upgrades that just happened at the beginning of this year or late last year. I forget exactly when those updates were. But I'm really looking forward to it. I'm just expecting it to be super expensive, like $3,000 or $3,500. It's going to be pricey. Eric G said, you know a question is heavy when he downs water from a 5-gallon water bottle. It's actually it's 3 liters. So I don't know how many gallons that is. But it's a big water bottle, isn't it? Rakesh Karta asked, have we reached the saturation state in design of mobile phones? This is a good question. And I think it's part of the reason why hardware sales are slowing down across the board in terms of tablets, iPhones. Because if you think about it, the original iPhone was released in 2007. That was about 12 years ago. And in the first few years, there are all kinds of improvements that can be made. Major improvements. But a decade later, there's only so much you can do year to year to year to update the product and make it more appealing. Also, you run into the problem of these phones are becoming so powerful that you don't need to update as often. They last a lot longer than they used to. And now we're sort of stuck with this form factor that's pretty similar. All smartphones pretty much look the same now. They have like an edge-to-edge display. They have a slate design. They're pretty thin. They have good battery life, good processor performance, high-quality display. And so now people are looking at this thinking, what's the next paradigm shift for smartphones? And everyone is thinking it's a folding smartphone, like the Samsung Note X, Mate something. There's I forget the name of it. The Galaxy Fold, the Samsung Galaxy Fold. And then there's the Huawei Mate X, both of which are folding phones, not yet on the market, but that's the idea. Will that be the next thing for mobile phones? Maybe. Is Apple developing their own foldable smartphone? I'm sure they're working on it. Who knows if it's going to be released ever. But that might be the next big thing that gets people excited about phones again. Weird People. Greg, do you think that iPads should have wireless charging. Um, Maybe the iPad mini. I don't know about the regular sized iPads. It would be very awkward to try to position a device that large on a small charging coil. So I don't think we'll be seeing that. Daniel asked, "Do you think Apple does not? Oh, do you think people don't appreciate Apple products enough? I feel like some people buy Apple products just because they're premium. It makes me feel kind of angry." Probably same for you. Um, Not really. I mean, whenever whenever a product becomes super popular, you have people who buy it because it might be popular. I mean, that may be part of the reason why. If everyone has one, you're more likely to get one. And there's good reasons for that, things like iMessage. Uh, but it doesn't bother me that like they don't appreciate Apple. I mean, I guess if someone buys an iPhone, they appreciate it. That's why they bought it. They may not know much about Apple or anything, but that doesn't bother me. Nick Greenway, that's a really good point. He said the iPad should have reverse wireless charging. That would be interesting. If I could charge my iPhone from my iPad, that I can see that being very, very useful. Evan Williams asked, "What car do you drive?" I drive a 2005 Toyota Corolla. Sheldon Williams, I like this question. What would be your dream job if you ever had the opportunity to work for Apple? You know, now that I've had this YouTube channel, if Apple ever reached out to me and wanted to hire me for some reason, I would love to be like a resident historian. Like work at Apple's headquarters and sort of help organize their historical archives of Apple products, of data, specs, photo archives, keynote archives, just sort of like I'm sure there's a department that's in charge of that. And I would love to kind of be involved. DEM asked, "Have you ever been to an Apple keynote?" I've never been to an Apple keynote. I would love, that's one of my dreams. If I ever am invited to an Apple keynote, because I don't want to pay the ticket price. I don't know if you guys realize this, but it costs like $2,500 for a press ticket to go to Apple's keynotes, plus the cost of travel and everything. But if they invite me, that would be a dream come true. Rakesh Karta asked, "Do you think Apple is lagging behind Samsung in innovation, especially software?" This is a really hard topic, and I'm going to take a drink of water. Because here's the thing, there's a difference between true innovation that has a functional effect on people's lives in a transformative and creative way. There's a difference between that and gimmicks. And Samsung has a reputation of gimmicks. If you guys remember, there used to be a feature, I don't know if they still have it, but in order to share a file, like in order to share a photo, you would like tap phones with another Android user, and then you would send that file to them. And it's kind of like, it's cool in a commercial, like, oh my God, they tapped phones. But in real life, if you have a picture you want to send to like your family, you don't want to have to get up and walk around the room and like tap everyone's phone to make sure they get the picture. You just want to send the picture. So it's a gimmick. It's not an innovation, and it doesn't make sense. And that's why no one ever used it, and I don't even think it exists anymore. But things like that, Samsung just has a reputation of doing. And so people will say, oh, that's innovative. Apple isn't doing it. But I wouldn't call that innovation. So it's a complicated topic, and I don't think Apple's lagging behind Samsung. I think Apple focuses on the right features, on the most functional, helpful features that actually make a difference in people's lives. Apple isn't just trying to fill out a spec sheet on a sales form to try and sell their phone by saying, oh, look, you can tap it, or whatever their gimmicky feature is, to try and differentiate themselves from the competition. Apple is genuinely trying to make products that deliver a really good user experience, because they understand if customers love their products, they love the experience they have with those products, they're going to come back, they're going to trust you as a brand, and they're going to continue buying your stuff. And that's part of the reason why Apple is so successful. They have perhaps the most loyal users in the industry. Andrew Pollane, yeah, he said AirDrop is so much faster and it only takes a few seconds. AirDrop is perhaps one of the most incredible features of iOS. And I don't know if Android has really an equivalent. I mean, AirDrop has saved the day for me so many times when it comes to transferring large files without having to upload it to Dropbox and then go on my computer and then download it, or through email or iCloud. AirDrop is just one of my favorite features. Colby asked, what's your favorite Apple product from the Steve Jobs era? I'd have to say the iMac G4. I think that design was just so unique, and it made so much sense, and it was so beautiful. And the way the screen, you could just adjust the position. I don't know if you guys have ever seen an iMac G4 in person and you actually have moved it, but it was so smooth and effortless, especially considering how heavy the display was. Eric G asked a good question. He said, some tech pundits are saying the Apple Card is Apple's tool to hopefully lock down existing customers who have it. Any thoughts on this? I'm assuming you're talking about keeping people in the Apple ecosystem. And I would say that's what Apple's trying to do with every product. That's what every company is trying to do with every product they make. They want to keep you in their ecosystem. So yes, absolutely. And it makes sense because they're offering 3% cash back on Apple products. So if you're going to buy a smartphone, you might as well buy an iPhone and get, what's 3% of $1,000? $30 back? So yes, I think it is a way to effectively keep people in their ecosystem. Robin asked, hi, what do you think about sign-in with Apple, and do you think it comes with iOS 13? I'm almost positive that's part of iOS 13. Someone can correct me if I'm wrong. But sign-in with Apple, I don't know if you guys heard about this feature, but it's probably my second favorite feature of iOS 13. It's similar to sign-in with Facebook, where it uses your account data to create other accounts on other platforms. And I cannot wait to use it on everything. It's so much more secure than creating all these different accounts. It keeps all your passwords the same. And it should be just effortless to navigate different accounts with one unified login, which is sign in with Apple. So I'm really excited about that feature. And I am almost 100% positive it's coming out with iOS 13. Joe Sean, he said, is that the Discord server? Yeah, the link that Nick is posting is our Discord server. If you don't get your question answered today, you can go there after the stream is over, and I will be there, and I will take a look at all your questions that you posted on Discord that didn't get answered here, and then I'll make a short Q&A video for you after the stream and post it only for my Discord members. Evan Williams, this is a good question. Have you ever broken a phone, and was it an iPhone? I have never broke a phone. I've never shattered my phone's screen. I may have scuffed it or scratched it a little bit, but I've never broken it. I'm trying to think if I've broken any Apple product I've ever had. I'm like super careful. I'm very careful with my Apple products, and I want nothing to happen to them. And so far, I've gotten lucky. Although I am now remembering one time I wasn't so lucky. The first time I got my Series 4 Apple Watch, 3 months later, I was at the gym in the shower, and I had set my Apple Watch on the ledge in the shower. I don't recommend doing that. And then all I heard was just shattering. That's all I heard. And it was my Apple Watch falling and hitting the tile shower floor at the gym. And it was actually kind of cracked in the corner, but it wasn't a big shatter. It was kind of a small shatter, and it still worked. So I figured, well, I'm just going to keep using it, and it'll be fine. I can just ignore that shatter mark, because if you want to replace the Apple Watch's display, it's $300, I believe, and a new Apple Watch is like $400 or $430. So the problem was I went swimming with it, and I didn't think that because it's shattered, that's going to let in the water. So it let in the water, and it broke completely, so I had to buy a new one. Alex asked, Greg, what do you think about the new volume UI in iOS 13? Do you prefer the old one? No, I'm really excited about the new volume user interface in iOS 13. If you guys don't know, they finally put the volume control on the side of the phone, sort of where the volume buttons are, instead of taking up the middle of the display and blocking the content you're looking at. So I'm very excited about that. Sam Swenson said, get a watch case on Amazon. I could get a watch case, I thought about it, but it just adds way too much bulk and heft, and it's really unattractive, in my opinion, cases on the Apple Watch. So for now, I'm just going to take the risk. Joe Sean, thank you for joining our Discord server. I appreciate that. RK asked, the fight for baseless display is over. What would be the next thing once they're done fighting with adding a bunch of cameras? When you say baseless display, are you talking about bezel-less display? Yeah. So basically you're asking what's the next paradigm shift for smartphones, right? It was, getting an edge-to-edge display, and now we've pretty much achieved that. Now it's trying to put in the best camera system. What's the next thing going to be? I don't know if it's going to be battery life. I don't know if it's going to be augmented reality. I'm honestly not sure. We'll have to wait and see. Alex, thank you for your patience. Joshua Barden asked, do you have Apple Care on your watch? I didn't for my first one, but you can bet I do now. Robin asked, do you have a cover on your iPhone? I don't have a cover, but I do have a case. Brian Halstead asked, would you rather have faster Face ID or an in-screen Touch ID? I would rather have a faster Face ID. I love Face ID. If you guys don't use it, it's an incredible experience because it's like it's not even there. You don't even think about unlocking your phone when Face ID unlocks your phone. Unlike Touch ID, when you had to deliberately put your thumb on the sensor and sort of wait for it to register. And sometimes it didn't register if your fingers were wet or it wasn't positioned correctly. So I really prefer Touch ID. Alex said, graphene batteries. What do you think about that, Greg? I don't know much about graphene batteries. Supposedly, Samsung is looking into using them for future smartphones. Apparently, they pack in a lot more energy. They're much more energy dense than lithium ion. So maybe they're the future of batteries. Maybe the technology needs to be developed further. We'll just have to wait and see on that. Andrew Wilson asked, do you use Siri shortcuts? If so, what kind do you use? I actually haven't set up any Siri shortcuts yet. Maybe one day I will. Alexandros Prokos asked, will the iPhone 2020 set the next revolutionary step forward like the original iPhone did, but better? Perhaps. I mean, the iPhone 10 already was a huge milestone, and it will be hard to outdo that for the 2020 iPhones. But if they can achieve that big of a leap forward next year, it will be a big achievement, and I'm really looking forward to what they have in store for that model. Dane Reed asked, are you going to get the new Mac Pro? I'm not. I would love to have the new Mac Pro. I would especially love to have the Pro Display XDR. I think that looks incredible. But it's overkill for what I do, and it's extremely expensive. So I'm just going to stick to the MacBook Pro. Baiku Pavel asked, how many Apple products do you have? I have an iPhone 10. And I'm going to tell you the Apple products that I'm using. I mean, I have an Apple collection of old Apple products, but I'm not going to include that. I have an iPhone 10. I have an Apple Card, if you want to include that as a product. I have the AirPods. I have the iPad Pro. I have the 4th gen Apple TV, the 3rd gen Apple TV. I have a MacBook Pro. I have a HomePod. I think that's about it. So about 9 products. Sammy asked, what program do you use to edit? I use Final Cut Pro for my video essays. When it comes to my animated slideshow videos, I use Keynote with a little bit of Final Cut Pro. Evan Williams asked, what's the first MacBook you got? The first MacBook that I used was actually from my dad. My dad bought it originally, and then he upgraded it and then gave it to me when I went to college. And it was the late 2008 MacBook. That was the first unibody MacBook. and the last with a removable battery. Raymond RB, Apple credit card, what do you think? I touched on this at the beginning of the stream, but I'll just do a little summary of what I said. If you really care about the rewards part of a credit card, the Apple Card is not for you because the rewards are just average. What's really incredible about it is its integration with the Wallet app in iOS. The way it tracks your spending, the location of your spending, the way it knows the merchant of what you bought. It's really incredible, and it saves me a lot of time because I used to actually use my debit card statements and by hand enter every transaction into like an Excel spreadsheet or a numbers spreadsheet, which is the Apple version of that software. And then I would track my spending that way, and it would take me hours every week to do that. Now it's done pretty much automatically on iOS in the Wallet app, which is a huge benefit for me. Septic asked, why do you think Apple products are getting more and more expensive? I think part of the reason is hardware sales are slowing down, and Apple is trying to find a way to offset that revenue loss. And in order to offset that, they've raised prices across the board. Hopefully we don't see them go up anymore. And hopefully once Apple starts getting more revenue from their services category, they won't be so dependent on hardware. But I think that's part of the reason why. All right, guys, I want to be on for about 4 more minutes. Again, if you didn't get to ask your question, go to our Discord server and post your question there. I'm on that server. I can answer your question directly in a short Q&A video that I'm going to make after this stream is over. Eric G asked, do you think there are people who are still hoping for skeuomorphism to come back in iOS as sort of a way to innovate at least the interface design? Are you personally missing it? If you guys don't know what skeuomorphism is, it's back in iOS 6 when there was like a glossy interface with reflections, with shadows. The Notes app looked like an actual notepad. The Calendar app looked like a paper calendar. Those like realistic effects are referred to as skeuomorphism. There's another approach that Apple took in with iOS 7 where they pretty much took away all those embellishments and opted instead for a flat, more simplistic, minimalistic interface, which is what I prefer. So I do not miss skeuomorphism. I think if you go back and look at it, it looks pretty bloated and unnecessary and overkill. And again, just because you change something about a product doesn't make that an innovation. So if they were to go from the flat interface to skeuomorphism, that's not necessarily an improvement, and it's not necessarily innovative. It's just a change. Salmonator asked, do you think Apple will go bankrupt in the near future? Apple has enough cash on hand to survive for at least 100 years. If they made $0 in revenue for the next 100 years, they would still survive because they have so much cash. So we're not going to see them go bankrupt anytime in the near future. Mike Rowe, that's a good question. Will you ever make a video about the history of the Apple website? I've put that topic in a voting poll before, and it didn't win. I don't think there's much interest in it. I'll put it in a voting poll in the future and see if it does win, and then I will make a video about it. But that would be interesting. Daniel C., thank you for that $5 super chat. He said, visit #AfterStream on Discord to continue. Yeah, again, Nick, if you can post that, or Daniel, if you can post that link to our Discord server, people can go there and continue to ask their questions for me to answer. Sheldon Williams asked, how do you feel about the hypocrisy of Samsung now removing their headphone jacks? Yeah, if you guys don't know, when Apple removed the headphone jack from the iPhone 7, Samsung ripped Apple apart for it. And Samsung users and fans ripped Apple fans apart for it, saying we were stupid for buying a smartphone missing one of the most important features, which is supposedly a headphone jack. And Samsung actually made advertisements called Ingenious, where it was like a satire of someone going to the Genius bar and having a poor experience. So Samsung recently came out with the Galaxy S11, which now does not have a headphone jack. And it just sort of made me really, really happy. I just felt very validated, because this is what always happens. If you look at this from a historical perspective, when Apple removed the floppy drive from the iMac, people lost their minds. And then everyone else did it. When they removed the CD drive from the MacBook Air, everyone lost their minds. How could you buy a laptop that doesn't have a CD drive? And then guess what? Everyone else did it. When Apple removed FireWire, people lost their minds. When Apple removed USB ports in favor of USB-C, everyone lost their minds. And now companies are starting to do that too. And that's what's happening with the headphone jack. So it's just very satisfying to see Samsung fans raging at Samsung for doing the same thing Apple did. All right, guys, I'm going to end the stream here. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate it. Do not forget to check out the Discord to ask your questions that I did not answer. Ask them on Discord, and I will answer them after the stream. Next Saturday at the same time, I will be doing a live stream again. Thank you guys for watching, and I will see you next week.